Thank you for joining us this evening for the Artist Exchange, a group created by and for artists to share new work, ideas, resources, and opportunities monthly or bi-monthly over a glass of wine or tea as you prefer. I'm having water. Please let us know where you're from in the chat, and then grab your drink and join us as we discover the work of two wonderful artists. I'm Shelley Rugg, the Executive Director at Gallery Route 1 and co-producer of the Artist Exchange. For our presentation tonight, we ask that you please stay muted unless asked to unmute. For best viewing, select Speaker View from the top right corner of the Zoom viewing screen. And we want you to know that we are recording today's presentation for future viewing on our website and YouTube channel. Now, please join me in welcoming writer, co-producer, and host of the Artist Exchange, Pamela Blattner, an East Bay artist whose sculpture and drawings reflect on our relationship to wildlife and environmental destruction. She has taught at several universities, including Tufts, the Universities of Maryland and San Francisco, and Pixar Animation Studios. In 2017, she was appointed to U.S. Arts Envoy. She was appointed as the U.S. Arts Envoy to Burma. Please welcome Pamela Blattner.
Thank you, Shelley. That was very nice. And no matter how many times you say it, I like hearing it. So I get to introduce our guest tonight, and I'm very excited about that. Our guests are two California artists, Dani Rosales and Andrea Bersaglieri. And they are two artists whose work offers an analogous narrative to each other. However, while one body of work is set in nature, the other one takes place in an urban setting in the city. Okay, let's begin with our first guest, Dani Rosales, the artist that I met first of the two. And he works in materials commonly used for fabrication, concrete, steel, glass, to create sculptures that suggest a story, an urban story of construction and destruction. In his own words, I enjoy the interplay between the delicate transparency, the smooth strength, and the opaque roughness. Working with only 3 materials is like a dance, finding balance, repetition, and movement. Rosales refers to these materials as a visual language and a gift. So, show us this gift reflected in your work. Dani, show us your slides.
Okay, next slide up, you can find. Hi everyone, for being here. Thanks to Shelley and Pam for putting this together, and Andrea for being here with us too. I've been working with these materials. You can show the first slide if you will. This piece is untitled, as most of my work is, and I've been working with concrete, steel, and glass for about 5 years now. Prior to that, I was working in ceramics and moved into this stuff. Shape and texture have been part of my life for a long time. I recall as a child, looking at the floor tiles or the ceiling or how the furniture all fit in. I was kind of in my own little world trying to fit things all together. Didn't really know what I was doing with it, but it's just kind of where I was at the time. And here we have this piece again. It's untitled. It's probably about 12 inches tall. And the next slide will show you the opposite side of this piece. Here you can see the glass. Here the glass is clear, but the glass is fun to play with because it's fun to work with because you can see through it. You can see reflections, or sometimes I'll chip the glass. So it's it's an important element in the work, and it's always changing. It's just it's subtle, or it can be really dominating, but it's always there. it's one of the three things that I work with. And let's see what the next slide looks like. A similar piece. I like this one I'm seeing the circle of the pipe, how it, compares to the rest of the shapes in the piece and the wire. The wires are fun to work with. They create lines, and lines are really strong. You could take a line and add it to a piece that really changes things a lot. And in this piece, I've got some nuts and bolts holding it together, but I basically buy all materials raw and cut them down. The steel, I'll buy it raw and I'll take the finish off and refinish it. And the glass, I buy it in sheets and cut it and chip it. And the concrete is every piece has a unique mold that it comes out of. So I really enjoy working with my hands. I'll always have, and I always will. And I see the next slide up there. This piece, sometimes I'll do a piece, I'll be working along, and I'll have a piece that kind of changes direction on me. So I'll call it a marker piece, and maybe it'll be an oddball piece, or maybe it'll just be started, a new series of work. So there's some, I probably have a number on it, like marker number 12 or something like that. But and you see the concrete, the mold of this one, I use some clay to roll out and press into it to make my mold. I use lots of different things and however I can find. And let's put the next slide. This is a newer piece. It's very much on the minimal side, and I'm playing around with this really slick surface. I change up the mix of the concrete to get different finishes of it. And this one I basically wanted just to kind of show off the concrete and just see it as itself. With a small wheel on the side, I cut the glass out and I chipped that. And that's all it is, really. It's that and a little bit more form on the other side of it. But I think I can swing from something that's very minimal to something that's more complicated and still come across as my work. Next slide, please. Okay, this is also a pretty new piece, and I added more glass circles to this one. I think I just polished them up. I cut them all on my saw and cut them through, polish them up. And this one has has a coil on it that you can see. Well, you'll probably see it's comes up in a lot of my work. Let's see what the next slide looks like. Okay, this one is different. This did this a couple years back. Same materials. I just some smaller wire in there, and on this one, I know I used a clay mold for this, but then I went in afterwards with some white concrete and rubbed it in to bring out more of the surface. Yeah, and this piece I did a few in this direction, so let's keep going. Whatever I do at the time, whatever it feels like, I just keep doing it. And then sometimes they'll like an oddball piece, or sometimes I'll have a pile of them that'll look like these and look like that, and they'll fit together. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a larger wall sculpture. It's probably about 48 inches from top to bottom, weighs probably about 30 pounds. And in this piece, you can see in the glass on the right side, the reflection there is some trees. I took the picture and I had it on the ground. And so the trees aren't in the piece, but they're in the piece for this picture. And that's something that, like with the glass again, is it changes with whatever environment that I put it in, reflection or the trees in the background, or maybe reflection of one's face in there. So it's fun to play around with. Next piece, please. Okay, this is a typical mold of what I've been doing. The rods are welded together and set inside the clay mold. I rolled the clay out. I textured it first and rolled it out, textured it, and added some cups in there to give it a little more form. And then I'll pour concrete into this. So this piece is on one side. So I think the next slide shows it out of the mold. I'm ready to see that. So there's the piece. That would be the piece that was on the back. And sometimes what I like to do with these pieces is I create little shapes within the shapes, like all these steel rods, like towards the bottom. If you come at a certain angle, it'll create a circle. I'm always playing around with just these different types of shapes, see what I can do with them. I think the next slide shows it. Shows it. Yeah, that's the finished piece. So there it is. I mentioned working with these shapes and putting these shapes together as a child. As a bit of a dreamer and always trying to put these shapes together, and that's what I've been doing. But also as a child, I was making things and always will with working with my hands. Next slide, please. Here's a triptych that I did at the same material, the concrete, steel, and glass on 3 panels. You can't see the glass too well, but it's there. I had a show coming up and I wanted to do a larger piece for a wall. So I started doing these and they're fun to work with. I had some panels from some other project that I put into use with this one. Yeah, concrete, steel, and glass on wooden panel. And you see in the picture, it's probably about 8 feet, 9 feet wide. I think the next slide has another piece. That's also on panel. Yeah, this one, like the other piece, I don't want to be conformed to the 4 corners of the panel. I extended the work outside of that, and wanted to make more use of the space that was allotted to me. And I think the next slide is a detail of the same piece. I'm ready for that. Yeah, there's the glass that's in the piece. This one I've taken the concrete. I took the rocks out of the concrete and made more of a mortar of it, and added some concrete dyes to it and splashed it around. So I had some fun with that. And yeah, ready for the next piece. Okay, here's 2 pieces. One on the left is titled The Line. I did title this piece, and it's basically a line. It's just kind of, for me, trying to figure out how much line is necessary to add to this little box that I have down below the panel, the wood panel. And it's just kind of an exercise with that. And the piece on the right was similar. The piece on the right, it's suspended from the ceiling. And then when I got to a bigger space, I was able to add I added the line that's in the middle just to kind of see if it needed more or less, or if it added anything. And I decided to keep it in there because it had a certain tension to it that I liked. I think the next slide has an image of that one. Yeah, this is the piece, and it's probably around about 4 feet wide. And I think I've mentioned, but out of high school, I started hanging sheetrock, and with sheetrock, basically you're taking a big rectangular shape and cutting it to fit inside of a house, a wall or a ceiling. So, and that's part of what I'm getting at here, I think, is the wires in this piece was part of staying in the building trades. That's why I came across this stuff, and I really like working with it. And although all the work that I did in the building trades, you don't see it, it's all covered up with, got it finished out or with some other material. It's been a big part of my life in my work. Let's see what the next one brings up. Next slide, please. Okay, here I am with an installation, I believe, of that transmission gallery here in Oakland. suspended wires from the ceiling on the piece on the left, and in the back I've got 5 smaller works on panel, and piece on the right. Again, I took the piece and I got a bigger studio, so I was able to play around with more of the form of the piece and how I could change and add or subtract to it. You know, we always add and subtract to things, and I decided to keep the wires in, and I added some more glass. I glue chipped the glass. I think the next slide has a close up of that. So this is a close up of the piece, and the shape more to the left of the piece is kind of a grayish. That's where I glue chipped the glass. The glass is hanging from the hooks there. It's all hanging from the ceiling, and the glue chipping is an old stained glass technique that I picked up just online, how to do things, and it's been working well for me. Next slide, please. Okay, another piece and hanging from the ceiling, and I think I titled this one between this and then. The piece itself is probably about the main body in the middle is probably about 32 inches long. It just sense of the scale of it, and it was fun taking it out and adding to it, because originally it's had the centerpiece in it, and that's what I had completed. But then again, with a bigger studio, I was able to add more to it and add more interest, I think, and it could change. I could change these pieces and add more or less wires to it. And if I do title a piece, I mean, the title can change. It changes as the piece evolves, or it just changes with whatever mood I'm in at the time. Let's see. I think the last slide is here. Okay, I'll leave you with this one. One day I woke up, I was going to make a cake. So here's a piece of cake, and it's concrete, steel, and glass. Same stuff. And yeah, I made 3 of these pieces. And this is the last slide. So actually now I'm excited to see what Andrea has to share with us.
Okay, thank you, Danny. I can see what you mean by a dance, but it's sort of a geographical and now a gustatory dance. So very nice.
Thanks.
We will move on to Andrea. Andrea Bersaglieri's expressive drawings and paintings offer an analogous narrative to Rosales's work by using images of elements drawn from the natural world. To quote her, if we zoom out far enough so that humans are not the center of the world, not the center of the narrative, the earth includes dirt, the rocks, the plants, and animals. She adds, soil or dirt is not just a metaphor for the earth, it is the earth. Words matter because they help us to categorize things. Soil should be fed and nurtured, but dirt should be swept away. As forms become formless, they become soil, they become dirt, they become earth. All right, we are ready for you.
Thank you. Hi, you can probably go right to the first slide, Shelley, if you want. I feel like that pretty much explains my whole, so go to the next one. And this is a slide. The top image is from where I'm from, where I grew up, and where my family's from, and that is in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area. My hometown, San Anselmo, is right there in the center. But just how beautiful, green and lush and surrounded by water the whole thing is my idea of kind of normal world. But now I live right in the middle of the bottom image, and you can see it's all cement and not a whole lot of lush greenness and not a lot of water. And so it's taken me a while to figure it out, but just this dichotomy is the really like the driver of my work for the most part. So if we go to the next slide, the body of work that I'm working on now, I can probably trace back to this image. And this is a drawing, ink crosshatch drawing I did of the tree that's in our front yard. And we live in the house that my husband's family, he grew up here. My husband's family are Armenian immigrants, and they immigrated to this house. And they were very proud of the olive tree that we have in our front yard, and they nurtured it and they took care of it and they harvested and ate the olives. And I started just thinking about how the shape of, like, even where the limbs are and the orientation of the tree, and how structurally how it looks, including the scars of where all of the stems and branches used to be, is a record of the relationship that the caretakers of the tree have with the tree. And so that idea of our relationship with these bits of nature within this kind of cement locked area that I find myself in has been a source of inspiration for me since then, really. So if we go to the next slide, you can see a series of these really small prints that I did. I had gone back to printmaking, which I really liked when I was in school, and I especially like intaglio. And so I was doing these little 3-inch olive tree prints. Almost everybody in the town where I live now has an olive tree in their front yard. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how the shape and the structure of the tree is, again, a representation of the person who lives their relationship, not just with the tree, but maybe to nature in general, whether they don't take care of the tree and let it kind of half die and wither away, or whether they try and control the nature into this topiaried insanity. I found really, really interesting. And if we look at the next slide, you can see that that idea kind of amplified in the kind of the rigidness of the edges of the form, the rectangular form. Started playing around with sheen collé overlays with the prints. And I realized I was thinking about the way so many of us encountered nature, especially around here, where you're seeing it through windows or through architecture somehow. The olive tree idea stuck with me for a while, and if we look at the next slide, we can see me going back to painting, what I do, what I do normally, like historically, I guess we can say, and did a lot of these larger oil paintings where dealing more with kind of the mass, being in the mass of the trees, and but you can still see with the wires and stuff on top. Really interested in these references to urbanization and architectural elements and just the rigidity of those man-made objects. In the next slide, my mother had passed away, and she had a watercolor set. So I took her watercolor set and decided I was going to make a like I don't know if you guys I always really like gardening books and the way the illustrations look inside of gardening books, especially really old ones. And so I decided I was going to make a gardening book that worked for only my property. And we have a small, like, regular 50s tract house property, so it's not like a big farm or anything, but I do really enjoy gardening. So I started documenting all of the plants and flowers and stuff that I have on the yard as a way to kind of teach myself how to watercolor, because I had never watercolored before. Right around this time, the drought kicked into high gear, and of course all of my beautiful plants died one by one. And if we go to the next slide, I found myself doing, I changed all the landscaping and stuff from what I had to something that was more drought tolerant, and I spent a lot of time weeding. And it wasn't too long before I realized that the weeds themselves were just as beautiful, if not kind of more beautiful in an interesting way than the flowers that I had been focusing on. Not just the weeds, but like when you're, clipping things back, pulling out unwanted volunteer plants or whatnot, the things that were presenting themselves to me while I was working out there just really spoke to me, and kind of spoke of the tenaciousness of nature in general. And that kind of took me down a different road. If we look at the next slide, we can see an example of a residency that I did in 2018 up in Los Angeles at a place called Shoebox Projects. And I was kind of investigating what's kind of growing up naturally without the help of people or in spite of people that that can speak to nature in this urban setting. This is a wild mustard plant that was growing on the side of the 5 freeway that I pulled up and brought back to the studio to document, because I think just like kind of bearing witness to what's happening with the climate is a really important component. And I just got more and more captivated by how the dirt is kind of clinging to the plant, and that communication between the plant and the dirt that it's clinging to. If we look at the next slide, this is kind of a perfect example of me out there, you know, just kind of screwing around out in the yard and pulling up a weed and seeing this clump of dirt clinging to the bottom of it, and it became kind of an aha moment. So if we look at the next slide, you can see where I'm really starting to spend at least as much attention on the dirt itself than the plant. And I just, you know, it's just one of those things, like you have those moments where you realize that you just never really looked at something before. And so we think of dirt as this plain brown, icky stuff that needs to be swept out of our house. And then just realizing it's not plain brown, icky stuff. It is literally everything that was above the soil as it breaks down and becomes that. And it also is the building blocks of anything that's going to come after that. And all of that information is actually in there, and you can see it if you look really, really closely. If you look at the next slide, we can see, I'm just kind of referencing one of the artists that has always been a deep inspiration for me, and that's Albrecht Dürer. You saw me, I do printmaking as well, and he's just a really amazing printmaker. But he has this one image that I think about often called the Great Tuft. And I was reading about him, and he actually would send his studio assistants out to dig up dirt around the place where he was working, and he would bring that into his studio to work. And so in the next slide, you can see my own version. I call this the Great Tuft of Suburbia, since I live in suburbia. And if you look at the next slide, you can see that I'm literally working the same way. So for all of these images, I'm just going right outside my studio door, digging up something, pulling up something, finding something, bringing it into the studio, plopping it on the table, and trying to capture as much of it as possible before it gets too limp. And when there's dirt attached to it, it actually stays pretty good for a couple of days. So I can usually get most of it done. So the next slide is kind of another version of that, where I'm just literally going out with a shovel, digging it up and putting it on a table and painting it. And I'm really kind of fascinated with this idea of, you know, like I was saying before, just simply documenting or witnessing what is growing around me and trying to not intervene so much. So I'm not really interpreting what I'm seeing at all. I'm just trying to describe what I'm seeing and trying to, you know, kind of share that sense of wonder at something as silly as a dandelion weed growing in a clump of dirt. The next image is similar to that. So you can see me just kind of dancing around this idea. And now if we look at the next slide, this series goes on for several years. It's ongoing. And I kind of use it as a way, if I haven't been in the studio for a week or more and I'm trying to get the juices flowing again, I'll go outside and dig up a clump of dirt and bring it in the studio and paint it. And it's a never-ending fascination for me, not only the shapes that emerge by themselves, but the colors and the way formalistically the lines of the weeds and the clumps of the dirts. And you know, now that I've seen Danny's work, I can really see the reference between his work and mine as well, just on a formalistic level. In the next slide, during 2020, during that horrible existential crisis time that we all shared, I did not find that time to be particularly fruitful in the studio because it was too mind bending, the whole thing. But at a certain point, I did come across a dead hummingbird in my yard, and it really felt like one of the stages of grief, like, okay, now it's time to paint a dead hummingbird, and that will represent the sorrow that I feel for the world right now. And so I painted this dead hummingbird, and it just felt so very profound to me. And it kind of looped back my thoughts both to the materials with the watercolor, but then also kind of the integration of everything that is above the earth. I mean, that hummingbird is going to become the earth within a matter of weeks if it's left outside. And so that kind of cyclical nature of life was just really moving for me. And so in the next slide, you can just see some more examples from that series. And that's an ongoing series. And it's really kind of surprising how many dead birds you come across once you start noticing them. And then once your friends know you start noticing them, then they start sending pictures of their own dead birds. I found that little tiny baby bird just on the sidewalk walking down the street one day. And it was one of those things where you take like 10 steps, and then you're like, wait a minute, I think I saw something. And then you have to step backwards and look for the thing that you found. Another friend of mine found that awesome blue jay in their bird bath. When they woke up in the morning, it was dead in their bird bath. So just these really, really poignant, profound seeming things that are just happening around us all the time, even when you're surrounded by cement all the time. In the next image, you can just see kind of a more expanded version of this. I was realizing most of my work was ending up relatively small, and I just had this urge to make a really, really big painting. So I kind of measured my biggest wall in my studio and got a piece of canvas that fit that size and stapled it to the wall and started doing a portrait of my front yard. And so I find it endlessly frustrating that all of my neighbors like to have an exact rectangle of grass in their front yard that they obsessively water and mow, and they don't like to have any trees. And so I kind of feel the pressure to have more trees on my property so that we can make up for the air that they're not making. That big shape on the right is the olive tree that I was showing at the beginning. And so you can see me, I'm playing with scale, zooming in, zooming out, the bird's really big, the tree's big, then there's just lots of scale shifting. But just kind of investigating, just going back to the straightforward kind of investigation of what I see in nature. Nature is right here. It's in my yard. It's in the parking strip. It's in the weed that's coming up between the cracks of the cement. You don't have to go to the national park or, think of these really profound areas, but to just really think about and appreciate what's close by. The next image is just the detail of some of the shots. We had a bird beehive one time, and some beekeepers came and picked it up. And then the next 3 slides, Shelley, if you just kind of want to go through them. This is a series of paintings I did, and I was like reflecting back on the fact that all those crazy fires were during that time as well. And that horrible light that happens when there's the fires nearby. And so I wanted to do some paintings that really captured that really horrible light. And I don't know, all I did was really talk about how beautiful the light, and ended up looking really beautiful in all the pictures. This is more recently what I've been focusing on. This is a really big drawing of dirt. It's 12 feet long and 8 feet tall. And this one too, it's just an expansion of those little dirt paintings I do, where I go outside and dig up dirt. In this case, I have like a little model photo shoot of the dirt in my studio. I print out pictures and make collages to get compositions that are that speak to me, and then do these real straightforward just documentation of the literal dirt, roots, mycelium, bits of everything that's in there, and kind of paying homage to it. The next image just kind of gives you a sense of scale with an installation shot from a show that it was in not too long ago. And then the last slide is my most recent work. And the reason why I was doing them is because I wanted to have kind of some medium-sized work, because I was falling into this trap of tiny things and really big things. So I wanted to make some more medium-sized drawings. And then after I started doing these dirt clots, it just struck me so profoundly how the size of them, when you see them in person, you can see a couple of them behind me. They're very human. Like if we were a cocoon, they would be about that size. And I'm calling this series Home Soil because I was just thinking about there's so much stuff going on all the time with immigration crises and wars and everything, where there's so many millions and millions of people that are displaced from their home and their home soil, and just how tragic that is. And I was thinking about that a lot. I'm not quite sure how the work's going to tie into that, but those are my thoughts as I'm working on it. The end.
Thank you, Andrea. That was great. And you have convinced me that the world really is dirt after all. Okay.
I'm just going to jump in here and say that we've got about 10 minutes to talk about what we just saw. And rather than just have our artists talk to each other, I want to go ahead and invite everyone to feel free to ask questions or make comments. And yeah, let's see what you got. I mean, Andrea and Danny, you can certainly talk to each other.
Yes, if there's a question that you have, seeing this is I think the second time you've seen each other's work, now's the time.
I know, I'm really struck with Danny's work about how it looks both prehistoric and futuristic at the same time. And I find that really compelling just because of the materials. And I'm curious how like fully formed your final compositions are before you get started, or if that all kind of develops during the process of your making.
Yeah, sometimes I'll work from a sketch, I'll start with that. And sometimes I'll, just get to work on something. Usually the piece, once I get it into concrete, it's pretty much there. Unless it's going the wrong way, then I'll set it aside and just cut into it. But oftentimes I'll work with the sketch and then go from there. Something I noticed about your work is that I'm really attracted to the linear quality, like the freeway weed. Very simple gesture of a weed that you come across, and but it's all there. Your composition's filled, and it's a wonderful piece to look at, and I'm really attracted to that. Along with these other pieces that you're doing too, the black and white drawings are really amazing to me, because they are something of the soil, but then you blow them up and they're just abstract form that really gets my attention. Yeah, I really like these.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I like that. With the charcoal ones, I really like the idea too that I could like take it out into the yard and bury it, and it would just become part of the dirt again.
The charcoal,
yeah, because they're charcoal on paper, they would just like
back,
so
yeah,
quickly.
okay. Wow, charcoal, fun. Yeah, it's interesting too that during the time of you were finding these dead birds, the timing of that, you became part of what you were doing. This kind of said something about the whole mood that you're in. So it was found that really interesting as well. The work you have, the larger pieces, I know it can't spend, how much time would you spend on something like that as you work on something else? I mean, do you do a color piece and then a black and white piece simultaneously, or?
Yeah, I'm pretty much working on everything at the same time because, you have different moods. Sometimes you want to be really quiet and contemplative. And so maybe you do a watercolor. So like everything's very, very quiet. Nothing smells or anything. And it's, it feels almost meditative in a weird way. The big paintings are a lot more physical. So you're up and down, standing on stairs and being real gestural. And and whatnot. So it kind of depends on, I just feel like I do better. And then I feel like when you're working on several different bodies at the same time, they're all kind of communicating with each other, and you start seeing connections that you wouldn't normally see.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty much limited to my space right now at the smaller studio, so I'm working on maybe one or two pieces at a time, but previously I had the liberty of working on many pieces at a time, and I like that. But I think maybe the materials I'm working with now it's just I have so much stuff out and it's really cluttered, so maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm staying with just one or two pieces at a time, so I get too lost in all my junk.
I know, because it does start becoming an issue, because you can see those black and white ones are now hanging on top of the painting. So, you know,
Look good there.
yeah.
Look great there.
I just think it's like amazing. You know, I've been working with Pamela now for I guess it's about a couple years at this point on this project. And she just stuns me every time how she makes connections between artists. And you know, at first glance, the work can seem really dissimilar, but then when you see the forms, you know, the clumps of cement versus the clumps of soil and the lines that come out, whether it's grass or wire, it's amazing. So
yes,
Thank you, Shelley.
I think it's interesting. Excuse me. It's interesting the fact that I'm just working with the dirt clods, things that you would normally see, and I work with materials in the building trades that would be covered up with would be finished, and you wouldn't see those either. Although I got the experience from the piece, it's gone, but I've taken the experience from that and make something else with it. But it's an interesting connection though. The dirt clods and the bugs and just all the things that you find down there. I spent a lot of time walking, the trails, and I have you're probably more likely to find me on the side of a trail looking at the leaves and the rocks than you find me in a museum. I don't get out to museums all that much. I really enjoy just being out in the nature and seeing things. It's very inspirational.
I have a question, if I may, probably more for Andrea than for Danny, but I'm just wondering if photography plays any role in your work, and if so, how?
It's really interesting, and I'm a teacher also, and so I think about this a lot. It's just our lives have changed so much, the way we all have a really good camera in our pocket at all times. So we're able to capture anything, anywhere, all the time. And so I do try, and I prefer working from life, and I do that mostly. But obviously with a really big painting, or if I'm finding a bird that's really grody and I don't want to, carry it home in my walk or something like that, I'm going to take out my camera and take pictures of it. And so I am not a photographer. In fact, I often say I'm the world's worst photographer. For some reason, I just can't take good pictures. But just the ability to be able to document things that I'm looking at that are inspiring to me, in a way that gives me so much information that I can reference that in a very detailed drawing or painting, I think is invaluable. It's, I'm kind of sometimes complain about technology all the time, but I definitely utilize that as well.
Well, I was curious also because time plays such an element in your work. And, if you have it live in the studio, and as you say, sometimes you're not in the studio for a week, you're really capturing something in a moment of time. And photography can do that for you, whereas the live material, especially with the organic material you're working with, is changing all the time. So
yeah,
there's evolution involved. So I wondered how you dealt with that.
And it's really fascinating too, because I have this one larger watercolor I did of a succulent, like a succulent branch that I had found, and I had pinned it to a wall, and I did, it stayed stagnant for a couple of days so I could finish this larger watercolor. And then I went off and did something else for maybe 2 weeks or something, and then I came back to it, and it had, the the flowery part of the succulent had fully opened and it sent out all these roots. So it was a completely different thing. And then of course I had to do another watercolor, but it was just like pinned there and it continued to grow and evolve. And it's just really amazing to me how, these things that we don't even pay attention to are just so alive and tenacious. It's kind of mind-boggling.
Nice.
I wanted to also compliment Pamela for putting the two of you together. I think that was just a real wonderful benefit for those of us that are listening to you, because we do see similarities. And I want to point out the interest in negative space for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Danny, when you started to put the long, you filled that negative space with your lines. And I know I saw the first time I saw this was at one of the galleries that you're showing at, and I found that very interesting, because your object is so powerful, and yet the negative space adds a tremendous interest. Obviously, a benefit. So thank you both. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kim. I'm going to have you on the program.
Oh, Kim.
All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions for our artist? If not, we can go ahead and move forward into our next segment of the program. Do you want to take it away, Pamela?
Unless
Have any
you,
questions or comments?
oh, do I? I just wanted to ask Andrea something. The dirt drawings that you did, what kind of pen were you using?
The big giant one,
Yeah.
that is charcoal.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Just like old school charcoal. In fact, there's a brand, it's called Alpha Color Charcoal, and they spell coal with a K. And I'm a teacher, so that's always what the students were using when I was teaching them. And then for some reason in the last, I'm going to say maybe 8 years, they changed their recipe. And it's just not quite as black as it used to be. And it drives me absolutely crazy. And I realized charcoal in general, because I've done a bunch of research, charcoal in general is just not as black as it used to be. And so I've had to like scour eBay and places like that to find the older packages of that, and just getting that really true black. I mean, if you're just working with black and white, then how black the black gets is really, really crucial. And so I found that to be really interesting. And then I was saying before, I like how temporary it is as well.
Oh. I found the same thing with pencil lead. It's much less soft and much paler, which is frustrating. Yeah. Okay, now I know there's something very poetic about making drawings of dirt out of charcoal, because charcoal is compressed matter, isn't it?
Well, I'm actually in the process of trying to learn how to make my own charcoal with the stuff that I find around here. So I'm trying to be as like local and cyclical as possible.
Very good. Very good. Okay, well, let us know. Okay. Shelley, I think you usually tell us about the artist exchange and how we came up with it. I noticed that this script has my name, so do you want to take it away?
Sure, Pamela. Yeah, well, the Artists Exchange was created to provide a platform for artists to learn about each other's work, processes, and techniques. And it's also a forum for finding out about various opportunities for artists. And so if you know of an opportunity for artists, now's the time to share. And so the opportunity could be a great show to see, a show you're in that we all should see. It could be a residency or a grant. So if you have any exciting things to share with your fellow artists, just go ahead and say it or raise your hand, whichever you prefer.
I can go ahead and
I have a
start.
piece. Oh,
Go
Dick?
ahead. No, Danny.
No, I was just gonna say, I have a piece, one piece in the Jerry show in San Francisco at the art gallery, on Folsom. It opens, this Saturday.
What's the
So if you-
gallery?
ARC, AR's the art gallery. Yeah,
Right, your gallery.
yeah. That's all I got right now.
Great, great. Okay, this is our residency that I happened to see. And it is for UCross. I don't know how many of you have been to UCross or heard about it, a residency in Wyoming. I've been myself, and it's absolutely wonderful out in the middle of just wonderful rock and
Oh, yeah, you cross.
yeah. But their call for fall 2024 is now open. As of well, it was as of November 1st, at 12 a.m. And they're accepting applications for general studio residency and the Ford Family Foundation's Fellowship for Visual Artists, but that's for Oregon artists only. The application deadline is January 15th, 2024 at 11:59. Okay, and I have, let's see, I have a link here. And I think, what did we decide to do about links, Shelley?
I already put it in the chat.
You did great. What a woman. Okay. Okay. And I think that's the only one that I have tonight. Anyone else?
I'm really excited that I get to show that really big painting that I was sharing with you guys, the one that's of my front yard, that big 8-foot monster, because I've had trouble finding a place that has a big enough wall. But there's a really cool exhibition space down here in Irvine at the Great Park that's basically an old airline hangar. And so that's going to be exhibition, kind of like revisiting the idea of California Impressionism, and it's going to be including some local artists as well as some pieces from the Irvine Art Museum of actual Impressionist paintings. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
What's it called, Andrea? The show?
I don't know what the name of the show is yet, so I will I'll let you know when I know.
Okay.
But I'm looking forward to that. Also, if anyone's interested, I'm part of a group called Eco Art Space that is a culmination of artists from all over the world that deal with different iterations of nature in their work. There's performance artists, photographers, scientists, all kinds of different people come together. And I'm part of a subgroup in there dealing with soil and because there's a lot of interest in soil and how important soil is and soil erosion and how do we keep our soil healthy so we have plants and it absorbs water and all that stuff. And we're all having our the DNA tested of our soil, and we're putting together a project that's going to be part of a scientific soil symposium in Florence, Italy in the summer of 2024. But the Eco Art Space group is a membership thing, but they have lots of opportunities if there's any of your artists up there that are looking to be in find some connection with other artists that are interested in dealing with all manners of nature.
You know about weed, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And a couple of weed members and founders, Sharon Siskin and of course Andre Singer Thompson, actually taught a class at Laney College about soil.
Oh,
and
yeah.
What wonderful. So I'd like to, if you're not in contact with them, I would like to connect you.
Oh, sure, that would be fantastic.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna share about Gallery Route One's current exhibitions. And so I'm gonna put a link in the chat to our website where you can learn more about what we're showing. We have a wonderful visiting artist in our project space named Dale Eastman. And her work is just really original and interesting and exciting. She has this wonderful melding of nature and technology, uses materials like moth, cocoons, and oh gosh, the components from computers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool stuff. And we also have two of our artist members are showing, Stephen Hurwitz and Austin Buckingham. And so if you're in the area, I hope you can come out and see that show. And then, gosh, I didn't write this down, but it just occurred to me, we are celebrating our 40th anniversary at Gallery Route One. And we have a big show planned where we've reached out to every past artist member that we could reach, and invited them to be part of a big group show. And we've got all kinds of festivities planned for December 9th. So if you're in the area, please mark your calendars for December 9th. And we hope you can come and visit us and learn more about what we do at Gallery Route One. Anything else? Anybody else got something to share?
I think that's it from this end. But I would like to thank Danny Rosales and Andrea Bersaglieri, or Bersaglieri. I'm not quite sure which one is right.
Sounds beautiful when you say it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I had a show in Italy once a million years ago.
Oh, there you go.
Learned just enough to get in trouble. But anyway, thank you, the two of you, for joining us tonight. And I know I learned a lot from both of you, and I hope that you learned from each other. And
Yes.
the next broadcast of Artists Exchange will take place on January 17th, 2024. And I'm presently in discussion with a potential guest for that program, animator, documentarian Mimi Chakarova. So let's hope that happens. Either way, we will have an interesting show for you, no matter who we bring in. So thank you for coming and joining us. Thank you, Shelley, for your wonderful shaping and forming. I can't believe you're not a sculptor. So
Thanks, Pamela. And I'm going to add, if you would like to be on the Gallery Route One email list, so you can be notified of future Artist Exchange events or other things going on at Gallery Route One, go ahead and put your email address in the chat and we'll get you added to our email list. If you're interested in appearing on this program, send an email to Pamela Blotner@gmail.com. And we also are a nonprofit organization, and so that means we're always asking for donations. So I am putting a link in the chat so that you can go right to our website and make a donation, and any amount would be thrilling for us. Pamela and I have been trying to fundraise for this program, and it's going slow, we're not going to lie, but it's our dream that in the future we can actually give stipends to the artists who come on our program. We're so grateful that so many artists have volunteered to be here with us, and but I'm a firm believer that artists should be paid and paid well whenever possible. So yes, and thank you again for coming. And as Pamela said, our next show is going to be in January, and we hope you can join us then.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you,
Thanks.
Shelley and Pamela.
Bye,
Thanks,
Shelley.
Tina.
Pamela, thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you, artists. Excellent work.